Here in the shop at Metal Tech 4x4, we're getting ready to install a set of our 2-door 6th gen Bronco sliders. So we have our 2-door Bronco hardware pack. We're going to introduce the parts really quick. First, there's the large weldments that are the sub brackets, and there's a left and a right sub bracket. And when you're looking at them, the right sub bracket has this narrowed tip on it and has a slotted edge on it. That's the right side, or the passenger side. And then the driver's side doesn't have a narrowed tip. It has only one side, and it has a single bolt on it, the driver's side. Moving over to the hardware, we have 3/8/16 grade 8. This is for mounting the tip into the transmission crossmember and also mounting the slider to the sub brackets. These all have 2 washers, lock washer, nut. You're going to use a washer on either end with a lock washer by the nut. And these, when you torque them down, have a torque setting of 44 foot-pounds. Included in the kit is a bolt fish. We'll show you later in the video on how to use it. It's a great little tool to have. Next up, we have our 1/2" 13 grade 5. These are the hardware that with the little small stick nuts. The stick nut's going to be directly on the back side of the frame that we're mounting to. This hardware all has a lock washer, and we're going to torque these down at 75 foot-pounds. Next up, we're going to move to the through frame bolts. Now, the through frame bolts we have on the driver's side, there's 2 through frame bolts. We have one that is short and one that is long. The short is actually the front one, the long one's in the back. We have that in the video. We'll show you when we put the long one in. These have very large washers that go to the inside of the frame, and then we have washers, lock washers, and then these have a locking nut that are included in there, say auto lock. And then when we go to the rear of the passenger side, we have another through bolt, another 1/2" 13 through bolt, and it has a special lollipop nut that has a locking nut built into it, and it comes with 3 washers and a lock washer. And we usually only use 2 washers, but sometimes we need 3, and we'll explain that in the video for it, but these are included ready to go. So the torque setting on these actually are not very high, about 20 foot-pounds. We really are just snugging these up. The lock nuts that are included in them is what's keeping everything tight for those through frame bolts. We're going to put the left sub bracket on first. The sub bracket's going to slide onto the frame here, go up. This hole's going to go through this hole up above, and this hole back here is going to go through this transmission hole on the transmission brace. First we have to do is loosen this wiring harness from the frame. So I'm just going to come in here with a wiring harness pry tool, but you can use a screwdriver or whatever. You just need to make that loose so you can bring this up and have this slide up right behind here like that. So we're going to take one of the long 1/2" bolts with a washer on it. We're going to feed it through the frame, and there's a great big hole on the inside of the frame, and we're going to pass it straight through. I'm going to go ahead and put a 3/8/16 grade 8 bolt through the underside of the mount here with a washer on it. And it's going to come up right through the mount in this hole that's already in right there. And I'm going to go ahead and put a washer, lock washer nut on the back side of this one. On the back side of the frame, we're going to go ahead and put one of the big washers, little washer, lock washer, and a nut. Snug up the bolts on the nuts at this point, but we're not going to torque it completely down yet. We want to make sure that this brake line is not touching the bracket on here, and it's really close right here. So what you do in that case, just take the brake line, use your hands, and just push the brake line in order to make sure that it's going to clear. It's really easy to move. They're very soft, very pliable. We don't want to use a tool because we don't want to crimp that line. But what I did is I just put a small little bend in it right there where that other bend is, and I've got it completely away, and it's not touching anything, and it's not going to rattle and hit anything. So now we're going to take 2 3/8" bolts. We brought the slider in now under the truck. The sub bracket is in front of the tab that's on the slider body itself. And so I'm going to take the bolts in these 2 round holes. We're going to put those through like that. This third hole here, this is actually, we just use that for hanging for powder coating. So I'm going to come back, put washers, lock washers, and nuts on these. And then I'm going to snug it, and it's just going to help hold it in place while we line the back up. So we're going to take our 1/2" bolt. We're going to put a lock washer and a washer on it. I have this ready to go. And then I'm going to take our small stick nut, and from behind the suspension here, the stick nut's going to come forward and come into the large opening that's on the subframe of the suspension mount. And this is a very, very strong part of the frame. And I'm going to take this bolt, pass it through, and go ahead and start it on the nut. And again, snug. I'm not going to put it in all the way, just so I can hold. And now I can go ahead and do the top bolt. So this next one I'm going to put in is where you're going to use the one long 1/2" bolt that you have in your kit. And this one long bolt when you put it right next to each other, you'll see it's 1/2 inch taller than the other bolts. Now we're going to take the long bolt, one of the 1/2 inch washers, put that on it, and it's going to go right through the frame to the back side. Now we're going to do a large washer, regular washer, a lock washer, and a nut. So on this inside nut, make sure that this brake line's not touching it. So if it can touch it, we're going to do the same thing as we did on the front. We're going to use our hands and just carefully bend the line out. So now there's no way that it can rattle and touch anything. So now with everything loose, you can adjust your up and down position and in and out a little bit as far as for fit to your truck and how it's interacting with your body. So we're going to go ahead and set it to where it needs to be, and we'll lock it down. All right, so the little stick nut on the back, only on the driver's side, when you tighten it, the little stick nut wants to come down and go towards the suspension bolt. And we'd prefer just to keep it up and out of the way so it's not ever touching any part of the suspension. So when you tighten it, again, it's going to want to rotate down. And the easiest way to keep it from rotating is just use a small screwdriver, pop it in the hole, and then go ahead and tighten it down, and now the little stick nut won't rotate downward. The passenger side bracket, and you know it's the right side because it has this tapered nose on it, and it has the slot on the outside edge. That's going to come over here and tuck right into the spot right here. And we're using this bolt hole in the transmission frame here, and we're going to come through up here with a 1/2 inch bolt. And we're going to start with one of the stick nuts. On the flat part, the nut's sticking up on one side, but on the flat part, we're going to take this bend part and we're going to bend it up, giving us a little pigtail to hang on to. And it's going to come in from below and pop right up and be right behind us for us to be able to put that bolt in. So now we're going to go ahead and put this bolt, but we're going to pull it from above and bring it down so it's easy to tighten and put down. And there's the hole in the frame on this transmission mount that's right here. Your fuel tank's in the way and the transmission mount's kind of in the way for your hand to easily reach in there and put it through. We've given you this bolt fish. So take the little bolt fish and then take your bolt, and you can actually thread the bolt into the little spring part. We're going to go ahead and put a washer on here now, and now that's ready to go. So all I have to do now is just reach up inside from above, bring this through the hole, and then pull it straight through. So this is the lollipop nut, and there's part of it that's flat, and there's part of it that has the nut. Now we're going to take the flat part, we're going to put it against the fuel tank. We're going to bring it up at an angle, and we're going to work it up past the fuel tank in this area, and you'll feel it kind of get to a void where it's up here loose. So now we have the ability to pass a bolt through this area here, and we'll pick up that nut on the inside. So just like the other side, we're going to take this small stick nut like this. We're not going to bend the end, and we're going to come in over the top of the suspension and tuck it in so it comes up, shows up through here. Now, to show you the alternative, sometimes you can slide them straight in. Just depends on how the suspension's sitting. So in this case, it's a little tight, so it's easy. We're just going to rotate this with the nut down, bring it along the top of the frame, and slide it above the suspension, and then we're going to rotate it down so it shows up in that window. So again, just like the other side, we're going to put the sub-bracket tab towards the front and the tab on the slider towards the back. I'm going to run bolts through it. I'm going to put a washer, a lock washer, and a nut on it. And then again, we're going to just snug these down. We got our little stick nut in there. We got our bolt with a lock washer next to the head and a washer. We're going to go ahead and pass that through, and we're going to get it started on that captured nut. Now this side, when we tighten it, we'll naturally rotate the stick up into the frame, so this side has no issues. We don't have to use the little screwdriver trick. So we put this bolt in with a washer and lock washer, and we fed it through, and then we have the lollipop nut on the other side with the nut facing into the frame, and it grabs hold of that. Now, I originally started with 3 washers on there, and I took one out because I needed a little more thread, and that's the tip of the 1/2 inch bolt we put through. And it's just coming through. It's not touching the fuel tank. It's got a nice good gap on the other side. We could possibly have ran the 3 washers. 2 seems to be working fine, and there's still plenty of space there where it's not going to touch the fuel tank. So this is good. So now we can adjust the slider in the back and then tighten it down. So as I tighten these, the little stick nut, I'm flipping it forward so it's not going to hang up on anything. So it's up here out of the way. The little lollipop nut. So these are snug. So now we'll go to the front and align the front and snug those down. Come back, and we'll run around the whole thing and torque everything down. So now we're going to take our wrenches, we're going to go back over, we're going to torque everything down, snug everything up, and now that we've confirmed our alignment on both sides are where we want them, and we'll go ahead and call it done.